Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a literal masterclass in corporate survival. We're unpacking a story that completely flips the script on office power dynamics. Honestly, it's a deep dive into how quiet, meticulous documentation can absolutely dismantle a toxic, high-level corporate cover-up. If you have ever felt invisible at work, or dealt with office politics that just felt impossible to navigate, well, this explainer is going to be incredibly validating for you. Everyone ignored the assistant. That was their biggest mistake. Now, that is the hook of our story today. It revolves around Maya Carter, a strategy lead who finds herself dealing with a massive corporate cover-up. We're talking stolen work, fake reports, hidden group chats, the whole shebang. But here's the twist. The real hero of Maya's story isn't Maya at all. It's Nina Ross, an executive assistant. And Maya's story proves the sheer, absolute danger of underestimating the invisible employees in the room. Because the people who are paid to sit quietly and take notes, they're often the ones holding all the real power. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the underestimated witness and the power of the background. To really grasp this, we have to understand the sheer level of access an executive assistant actually has. On the surface, Nina's daily tasks sound pretty routine, right? Booking executive rooms, forwarding sensitive files, muting high-level calls. But think about what that actually means in practice. She knows exactly who is in the room and when. She sees the raw, unedited versions of files way before they get sanitized for the board. When executives hit mute on a conference call to have a quick, private side conversation, she's right there in the room, observing every hidden detail. It's like a giant puzzle, and these seemingly mundane tasks give Nina the ultimate strategic positioning to witness corporate sabotage happening in real time. Now, Nina knows full well that the executives rely on her invisibility, but she also realizes a crucial point. People forget the assistant is usually the first person copied and the last person blamed. She knows that in a toxic environment, if you witness bad behavior but don't have hard documentation to back it up, the truth is just going to get buried by powerful executives. Knowing the truth is simply not enough. You have to be able to prove it. Which brings us to Section 2, Paper Remembers for You, and the Weapon of Choice. Surrounded by executives who regularly manipulate the truth, Nina has to figure out how to fight back. And spoiler alert, she doesn't do it with screaming matches or dramatic confrontations. Instead, she fights the convenient silence of her bosses using the most unassailable weapon available: documentation. Think about the direct contrast here between human memory and hard data. I mean, if you try to fight an executive's memory with your own memory, you are going to lose. Authority can so easily just deny a conversation ever happened, but undeniable, factual proof? That is a completely different story. Nina knows memory is weak against authority, but an audit trail? That's bulletproof. Maya actually sees a lot of herself in Nina. They're two women being punished for simply being competent in rooms that vastly prefer a convenient silence. And this leads to a really profound realization. When power says it does not remember, paper has to remember for you. Honestly, if you take away one thing today, let it be that. It is the absolute anchor of our explainer. Because paper doesn't lie, it doesn't forget, and it absolutely does not get intimidated. So how does Nina put this into practice? Well, every single Friday, she quietly creates private calendar exports. Why Friday? Because she's noticed a pattern. She knows executives have a really bad habit of going back and altering their meeting history, or just outright denying a meeting happened whenever things start going wrong. So she is quietly archiving an incredible digital footprint. And it's crucial to note here, she isn't doing this out of spite or revenge. She is doing it for pure survival. Eventually, an IT audit specialist named Jordan Price actually discovers these Friday calendar archives. And when Jordan looks at them, he has an absolute epiphany. He says, this is not a calendar. This is a map. It perfectly captures what's going on. These simple exports are not just schedules. They are literally a treasure map. They outline the toxic office politics, the hidden alliances, and the exact, down-to-the-minute chronology of the corporate sabotage playing out behind closed doors. Moving on to Section 3, Threats, Division, and Bribes as Obstacles to the Truth. So obviously, the executives are not going to go down without a fight once they realize Nina might be a liability. They immediately default to the classic corporate playbook. Let's break down exactly how Nina handles a threat from senior manager Clara Bennett. Over coffee, Clara delivers a soft threat, telling Nina that loyalty matters and heavily implying that assistants are easily replaceable. How does Nina react? She doesn't get emotional. She simply listens to the thread about discretion. Then she walks right back to her desk and writes a factual, policy-safe summary email to herself about the exact conversation. It's brilliant. She completely neutralizes Clara's emotional manipulation with cold, hard process. During that coffee, Clara leans in and says, "Careers are built on discretion." And Nina, entirely unshakable, just replies, "So are cover-ups." I mean, wow. It perfectly captures the tension here. Clara is trying to use polite corporate buzzwords to mask a very real threat, and Nina immediately strips away the fluff to call it exactly what it is. Next up, we have Ethan Brooks. He's a former rising star who loves to hide behind corporate jargon. His go-to tactic? Division. He tries to isolate Maya and Nina by weaponizing their job titles. Ethan corners Nina and tells her that Maya is just using her and that people like us do not survive board politics. But again, Nina doesn't get upset. She relies on her factual record. She calmly asks him to define what he means by people like us. When Ethan brushes it off with, "You know what I mean," Nina quietly promises that now everyone will. She records his exact phrasing, effectively turning his own divisive tactics right back on him. And finally, we get to the bribe. Victor Hale is a board executive who values control and quiet settlements way more than the truth. He tries a completely different approach. He pulls Nina aside and privately offers her a promotion. Ironically, it's the exact kind of recognition she deserved long before this whole mess started. All she has to do is keep her unverified materials out of the formal review. Victor says, "You can move up." But Nina rejects this completely hollow corporate victory. She replies, "Not by helping people bury the stairs." She absolutely refuses to climb the corporate ladder if the price is her own integrity. Let's move to Section 4 and see how this all builds, mapping the corporate sabotage and connecting the dots. Because now all of Nina's quiet data collection is about to be put together. The executives tried to threaten, divide, and bribe her, and they failed on all fronts. Now the dots connect perfectly. When you line up the calendar holds with the badge records and document edits, an undeniable pattern of sabotage emerges. Clara schedules the meetings, Ethan attends them, Victor receives the summaries, and an outside consultant mysteriously appears right after each crisis. If you look at the titles in the calendar, things like alignment, risk shield, and talent alternative, they perfectly align with previous corporate disasters that were conveniently blamed on Maya. It is an undeniable, documented sequence of events. Looking at this perfectly mapped timeline leads Maya to a pretty chilling realization about her bosses. She realizes they were not reacting to fires. They were placing the matches. Under the guise of restructuring narratives, these executives were quite literally manufacturing corporate crises. They were letting things burn just so they could control the outcome, and then pinning the fallout on targeted employees. Which brings us to the climax in Section 5, the language of process and the final takedown. We finally arrive at the dramatic formal review meeting. The executives walk in expecting a standard, easily dismissible hearing. They think they can just use their authority to talk their way out of trouble like they always do. But they are entirely unprepared for Nina. She takes control of the meeting, initiates a screen share, and starts dropping undeniable artifacts of truth right in front of a terrified room. She isn't sharing opinions. She's sharing original calendar invites, deleted attendee lists, the original names of the meeting holds before they were suspiciously renamed. She shows the Friday export logs and her daily task notes. The room isn't just shocked by the truth, they are terrified because the truth is so impeccably organized. As the executives desperately try to squirm and deny the evidence, Nina drops this incredible line. "I am not giving opinions, I am showing timestamps." It's brilliant because it completely removes emotion from the equation. The executives desperately want this to be an emotional argument because they know exactly how to win those. But you can't argue with data. You just can't argue with a timestamp. Clara makes one last desperate attempt to save herself, claiming that calendar holds don't actually prove anything. So Nina simply adds the task requests, the version histories, and her policy-safe coffee notes to the screen share. And in that moment, Clara realizes, way too late, that Nina has collected process. And process is the one and only language a corporation cannot dismiss. Nina looks at Clara and says, "You taught me procedure. I followed it better than you expected." She brilliantly uses Clara's own corporate language to completely and utterly dismantle her excuses. After the dust settles and the executives are fully exposed, Maya makes it a point to publicly thank Nina. She tells her, "You did not just help me, you protected the record." And that is a huge symbolic moment. As Nina walks out of the office at dusk, she is no longer just the invisible woman by the printer. She has stepped completely out of the background to become the undeniable hero of the story. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question to think about. Does your workplace prefer convenient silence, or do you have a room that cannot mute you? The core takeaway here is that sometimes you don't need a louder voice. You just need undeniable documentation. Think about how you protect your own record in your career. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.